Ready? Exchange. No questions asked.
All right, we'll have to take it all downstairs.
Test strips are
Good morning.
Good morning.
31.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that Arnie?
That's Arnie.
What's he doing here?
Mari?
Hi there. He doesn't like
Israel, Hollywood, California. Is that
I
you?
know. How about that? I'm so Hollywood. That's who I
Yeah,
am.
you are.
I've always thought you're Hollywood.
I hear that a lot.
Hollywood star. Well,
Yeah.
You'll come see me. You guys come through enough. I'm not saying goodbye to you guys.
We're not saying goodbye to anybody.
Just remember, we knew you went.
Oh, I know it. I remember.
I remind you.
How could I forget?
All right, honey. Good luck with
Good
all
to
that.
see you. Thank you. I'll see you. I'll see you. We're not saying goodbye.
We're not going anywhere.
Don't you worry.
Okay.
All right.
Arnie's busy replacing my test strip thing at CVS.
Oh,
I didn't realize the pharmacy had opened till 10, but Ryan was there. We talked the results.
Okay. Yeah, my test meter broke last night.
oh dear. Well, that sounds
It's,
important.
you know, you just kind of,
You got to keep at it. I always say life takes so much maintenance, you know, there's always something.
yeah, I mean, I have two of them.
Oh, that's good.
One that I carry in my purse and one that stays at home. So
That sounds very smart.
that's just, you know, when you got to test all day long.
Yeah, sure.
You just, you know, things changed when you go on insulin.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
you just
sure.
kind of, you make new rules.
sure.
And I ate dinner and came home and retested it with new batteries, and that was worse. So
Yeah.
like, you don't know from one day to the next.
I know it.
It's a challenge.
I know.
Always a challenge.
I have not seen your granddaughters in so long. How are they doing?
They're doing great. They were here Friday afternoon and Friday night for Shabbat.
Good.
And you know, they're growing up to the point where it's kind of scary.
Yeah, right. No, they do that, right?
I mean, I'm sure your kids have changed totally.
They have.
How's Lillian doing?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. Yeah, we just had a check-in and she's coming up on her full year without a seizure. So that is
fabulous.
amazing. Yeah, we need to get to 2 years, but still, this is a
Right.
pretty big milestone.
But she's on meds, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, she's on meds. And
And-
then the idea is when we, hopefully, God willing, when we get to 2 years, then we start tapering her off and seeing what
Right.
we can do without him. But we want to go
Did
2
they
years.
ever figure out what maybe caused it?
Not really. The best explanation, one of the neurologists basically explained to me that in brain development for real
Right.
little ones, you know, the brain starts out very compact and then it opens up as it grows.
Right.
He just said sometimes one of the cells kind of gets stuck in the wrong place.
Wow.
And then that triggers the seizure somehow. And that would explain why young children like Lil, you know, real babies sometimes just have them when they're growing up and then they hopefully, you know, stop, which is
Yeah, I mean, I know people that, like Alan Henkin's son
right. Oh, I remember that.
got him, but they figured out what was triggering them, but he didn't get him till he was like
right
15 or something.
Right. Well, you know, the thing is actually it's kind of good news for us that they did a brain scan or
Right.
And they did not find anything. So the good news is that they didn't find any structural damage.
That's the most
no
important.
stroke, no nothing else. Tumor, God forbid. So
Right.
that's that's a good sign of sorts.
That's good. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Most likely she'll grow out of it.
That is sure what we are hoping. All right,
otherwise, she seems like she
is
performs just fine.
She has plenty of personality, that kid. She's got a lot of self packed into that little body. So
but she's not restricted from anything, is she?
No, the only thing we have to do, and luckily she's so young that it's not a big deal, but basically anytime we're in a pool, one adult has to be one-on-one on her.
Right.
And it's really same thing when she's say on a play structure that she could fall off, just like if it were an adult that were driving,
Right.
you have to watch out for anything. A sudden seizure could be really, if she, God forbid, had one in the
Yeah.
bath and nobody was watching, that could be tragic. So you have to do a little extra care about that, but there's nothing she can't.
It sounds like it's the normal stuff that
Yeah.
you would do with a child that age anyway.
Exactly.
I think.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I know how you are with the kids.
Yeah.
I watch everything just because
Of course.
they're still, I mean, Gabby rolled her ankle the other day, and 3
Yeah.
days of taping, and the taping's coming loose, and she couldn't go to dance, so she was more than annoyed.
I'm sure. No, but you always want to be more cautious rather than less. Always, always.
But the good part is everything else seems fine.
Good.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be going back to dance tomorrow.
As soon
I don't
as
think
she possibly can.
I don't think she'll do her privates today. I think Sharon will make her do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's so prepared for her dance competitions that
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's concerned about. And she already did all the stuff, the major stuff. She already got she already got the stuff that these kids panic about that they're not going to get within the year.
Well, that's great.
So the rest of it is just, gold medals.
That's great.
All
Good
the
for
different
her.
medal levels. So she'll be fine.
Is Sasha's thing more dance, or does she do more like
Sasha's doing both.
Yeah. Wow.
The good thing is they're literally across the sidewalk. They're this big,
Wow.
And so she can, and there are a lot of kids at dance that do karate.
Oh,
and
great.
They say that it's, I mean, when she first started, I said, like, what? I mean, there's one boy who I think is 14 or 15, and he just got his black belt.
Wow.
And he's a dancer.
That's great.
But they say that the discipline is really good in all directions.
Makes sense.
There's common cheer kids that are taking karate because it's a physical discipline that you have to learn how to, she's got her red jacket. She's teaching other kids her age or lower.
That's
great. She's doing both. She's finally old enough that her whole team can do national dance competition. So I think there's 2 of them this year.
That's great.
So they may be virtual, but that's what we're dealing with.
Okay. All right.
Hi, Barry.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
Just start on karate.
Yeah, we're going to do karate this morning.
We're doing karate, and I'm going to show you how to fail.
Well, my
because I have no coordination.
Amanda did that for years. And through multiple black belts, and her closest friend, her sister, really comes from her time in karate, going back to middle school. So
Sasha discovered it with kids at dance, and they're all doing it together, and they go back and forth, and she loves it. I mean, they'll be for a bike ride, and she realizes she has to practice something for the next day, and she stops in the middle of a park somewhere, and she does her whole routine.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. And I know there were times we had to go visit a Korean restaurant because this was through ATA.
Oh yeah. So they started them because they can't do any sparring. They started her group on the poles, and Jason videotaped it like 2 weeks ago, and we were hysterical. I mean,
that's funny.
The hand-eye coordination with those poles that are 3 times taller than Sasha. It's exciting to watch their development.
That's great.
That's
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just
which one or all of yours are doing that?
None of mine right now. None of mine. We are well, we're pretty heavy on the quarantine because I need to see people.
Yeah.
So the kids they each kind of have one friend that they are able to see. But no, it's Merle's grandkids that are busy in karate,
Yeah, oh, okay.
dance, and all that. Yeah,
Yeah, one's in karate and dance, and the other one is totally dance. I mean, she doesn't want to do anything else.
Mhm.
Sasha would like to cram 3 or 4 more activities. She takes guitar as well, Zoom from
Oh,
Matt
that's great.
Cohen. They're doing it on, Zoom or some kind of computer thing. And so she would like to cram in as many things as she can, but there's only so many hours in a day. And they do have to go to school the next day. So that's, a priority.
Sure.
Merle, are they going to school? Are they hybrid or what's the
They are
story?
in school, Scottsdale School. They're at Cheyenne Traditional School. And Scottsdale schools have done an incredible job of monitoring case by case, school by school. The middle school that's at their school is in all day, whereas all the other middle schools, like the one by our house, is only, I think they're out at 11:30 or 11:45. I think the high schools are in all day. But they've kind of redesigned, modified the classrooms, the cafeteria, all the places. The
Mhm.
specialty classes like music and art, they no longer,
Do you have any plans after this?
they do, the teachers now come to the classrooms rather than the kids having to go to where music and art
Okay.
were.
Yeah, makes
And
good
they've
sense.
divided up music and art by quarters, so they're still getting in everything that they got. It's just a different structure, at least with
which
their school.
Which school is Cheyenne? Because there's only 3
Cheyenne is the
schools
school
in
that, I
there.
don't know what it used to be, but it's between Cactus and Frank Lloyd Wright on 100th Street.
Oh, I go right by it. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Oh, that school. Now I know.
that one. Yeah. And I mean, it's an amazing school. All the Scottsdale schools have incredible space. So I think that's a big piece of it, that they were able to restructure how they manage their classrooms. And they haven't had to need to shut down whole classes. I think the big thing is like with Paradise Valley schools, I don't think they ever should have started football and contact or group sports, because I think that's the biggest problem that they had.
Yeah.
So Scottsdale schools have kind of like, we don't need it this year. And for the high school kids, any seniors that had scholarships coming for college, those were all deferred until whenever. So I think I'm really impressed with and Scottsdale is having these huge meetings like once a month, on Zoom, where even if you're just a parent, like Sharon's on the PTA board just because she wants to see how things are, especially when you have 2 totally different children who need 2 totally different structures in school. And their teachers have been phenomenal as far as how to deal with this and learn. I mean, when they were doing it Zoom, or what they call, they have another name for it in the school system, but when they were doing it, they did an amazing job of keeping the kids from total pulling their hair out, sitting in front of a computer all day long. So we're very pleased.
All right. Well, good morning. Nice to see everybody. I think we'll go and get started. Barry Kipnis and Sarah Lee, how are you?
Very good, Mari. What's going on?
Good.
Other than what we know what's going on.
Right. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Other than that, we're good. Just kind of coping with the bittersweet nature of our life right now. So.
I think it's a bit early because the official start time is 1:45.
Oh, I thought it was 9:30. Okay,
Oh.
good. Oh,
You're part of our schmooze now.
okay, good. Great. Then keep talking.
Yeah, now you'll see
We're
people
supposed to gossip now.
Oh, well, what you got?
I have nothing.
Me neither. And here's Felix. Good morning.
We got our first shot. That's the most important.
That's great. That's
Did
wonderful.
your parents get theirs?
They did. I was
Oh,
really
good.
happy to see that. Yeah, they hadn't said anything about having an appointment or anything, so I didn't know when. I was kind of getting worried about that, but then they texted
Well, I
pictures.
saw somewhere that she said they got it, but it didn't say anything about the second one.
Yeah, no, just a few days ago they got the first one. So
Cool.
Most
I have
of
an
us
appointment.
didn't get notice of the second, and it's creating a lot of anxiety in people because
Yeah.
a lot of stories about not having enough vaccine for
Right.
the second shot. So
I have an appointment for Feb 11 is the earliest appointment I was able to obtain. But we're so used to quarantining in place that,
Right.
it'll just be a little longer.
Right.
Yeah. I think it'll all get straightened out. Be grateful we're not in Tucson. They're having huge problems down there.
You know, I believe that under the right circumstances, they are taking walk-ins, but you kind of
Yes.
have to get lucky. I drove out there. Somebody told me they were taking them. I drove out there. I got the wrong guy. He was like, "We don't take walk-ins here. Go home." I was like, "Okay."
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think, it's a little bit of just sort of being in the right place at the right time. But if you're motivated enough, it's
It's kind of a matter too of who you get
Yeah.
at that first stop.
yeah, exactly. So
We were very lucky. I mean, we had appointments, but we were very lucky and everybody was amazing. And we were at Chandler Community College. I think that's what it's called.
Most of
And
my
we were-
family,
We were
Most of
very
my-
lucky.
most of
as
my
far as-
family is in Illinois. And in Illinois, they haven't even started dispensing.
really,
Really?
Oy.
Really?
Why
Uh,
is that? What's going on? Do you know?
It's Illinois. That's what's going on.
Rob
and-
Blagojevich is in charge?
No, nothing left.
I'm
there's-
kidding.
It had nothing to do with Pritzker, who's the Democratic governor. It's a tough situation in Metro Chicago. They're having trouble with getting schools back because of the teachers union. Teachers don't, and understandably, teachers don't want to go back into the classrooms.
Right.
They're having the same problem in New Jersey where my stepson is an executive in one of the school districts. Teachers don't want to go back to teaching. They want to stay.
Yeah.
They'd rather
Online.
stay virtual.
Yeah.
And virtual teaching isn't working.
Yeah.
No.
Just isn't.
Mari, your kids are in school. They're all
My kids are in school. After both Thanksgiving and winter break, they had a week that everybody was on Zoom. I call it a detox week. I thought that was
Right.
very, very wise, and then but they're back and they are very, very happy to be back. And we feel very grateful because we know that's not available to everybody right now.
Right.
We feel very lucky.
That's great.
Yeah.
I can tell you that back in the New York area, many of my friends had appointments set up and then they were canceled because they ran out of vaccine.
Wow.
Wow. And my family in New York all got their vaccines with no problem. I
Yeah.
guess it just depends on where, the county.
Where, when, whatever.
I mean,
Yeah.
what a machine it must take to distribute this. I mean, just to get
Well,
Oh, it's awful.
for what it's worth, they did have 6 months to plan.
it. That's true. That's true.
But we're supposed to be able to sign up on Tuesday, but I don't even know where to go to sign up.
AZDHS.org.
Gov.
.gov.
.gov.
Gov.
Okay.
And I understand they're not accepting, in Arizona, they're deferring signups and registration for 65 to 75-year-olds.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I've heard several
I
different
heard Tuesday
stories
at
over the
9.
last few days.
I
No,
heard I can sign up on Tuesday.
That's
I
only,
don't know.
you can
I'll
sign
find
up.
out.
Barry, I didn't see anything about deferral.
I've been reading about it, although for Barbara, we're going to keep trying. Also, I've been told by many people that when I go for my appointment Feb 11, if she doesn't have an appointment, I should take her with me.
Yes.
Yes.
Just take her with me.
Yep.
There's a high probability that she will get, if she's in the
I know.
car,
I know many people who've done it that way.
as long as
Really?
she's in the car with me,
Yeah.
Yes.
there's a high likelihood that she'll get the.
Also in Arizona, if you can find a volunteer position, which is what our kids
I
did,
saw it yesterday.
Then
Yeah, I saw
you-
that.
at the end of your session, you get your shot automatically.
What do you mean by a volunteer
It's-
position, please?
Well, you can sign up to volunteer and like Sharon and Jason and some other friends of theirs that all did it, were runners.
Volunteer for the
They,
vaccine.
they
and-
help
right?
at the vaccination site.
They help
I
at the
see.
Right,
site,
vaccine
right?
sites, yeah.
And they're either directing you to the right line, or some of them have the iPads with all the information, some don't. Some are just at a station where they need people running back and forth with information, or at the end checking your car window to see how many minutes you waited before they can let you leave. And then at the end, when you're done with your shift, I think there's 3 or 4 shifts a day, they give you your
Wow.
shot.
How often is
They
it?
make you stay, they make you,
And they give you a date then to come back for you don't have to volunteer to
how
get
do
the
you know
shot.
when
is
how do
it
you sign
for?
up for the second shot?
They told us 21 to
So you
30
just sign up
days.
for it, like, how do you know, like,
Well, they told us that, and I know that Sharon Solomon seems to be having the same problem. They told us that we would get an email that would tell us when to sign up and what link to sign up for the
Yeah.
second shot. So but we get this thing every day when you check out from the shot. They give you like a little magazine, and it gives you all kinds of information
Okay.
as to what to do. And then they have a link that you connect to on your phone or however, and they will send you every day. We have received a text message to check in. How are we doing? Do you have any reactions? Have you had any health issues that,
That's
with it? I mean, I've been really impressed that every afternoon, like around 3 o'clock, I get this text message reminding me to check in. So I'm assuming that they're going to tell us in due time when to come for the third shot.
because I know, yeah,
I mean, the
I
second
qualify
shot. I
next
don't wanna
week,
do the
because,
third
I
one.
mean, my age, but I'm also, Neil and I both have underlying conditions. Today is we're calling it his brain anniversary. It's a year since his brain surgery today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank God.
We're talking this
That's
morning about how
great.
different things could have been.
No kidding.
But we both,
Right.
so we're both going to try and we'll get it when we get it. I know January's full. Even if we can get an appointment, it probably won't be till mid-February. I know that. It is what it is,
Right.
at this point. What can you do?
I'm taking my parents tomorrow.
Oh, good.
There are 2 aspects of this. Maricopa County has not dropped it from 7 to 65.
Right, I know I have to go to one of the 2 state ones.
If
Or
the
Right.
the
state
second one or something at the stadiums.
website for that is vaccine.
I'm sorry, what is
Yeah.
it?
POD vaccine.azds.gov, and supposedly that
Matthew,
takes
you're
you
cutting
to-
out.
Why don't you type it into the
Would you
chat?
please? Because you're cutting out and I really want to get that from you, Matthew. Thank you.
Can I add, I just joined you, but this is Becca. Barry had his first shot out at State Farm Stadium Monday, and last night he got the email telling him to go ahead and sign up for the second one. So in less
Oh,
than a
good.
week, he got the email saying, and it's a slightly different site, because clearly the second shots are not blended in with the scheduling for first shots.
It's also got to be the same company. I heard
Yes.
that on the radio, so that may
Yeah,
be why it's different.
Barry's card says Pfizer, and then it
Yeah.
gives the date. So they make sure that, he continues to get the Pfizer.
Right. I
Oh,
So
heard that.
Marcy, what I did for my parents is I had 2 different browsers opened at the same time and filling it out at the same time to make sure that we got the same slot.
Oh, that's a
That's
good
what we
idea.
did. That's what Arnie did for us too.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
were on the same
That's a good
place.
idea. Matthew,
Yeah.
thank you. I got it.
Robin, I don't know if you were on when we were talking about if are you physically driving your parents?
Yes,
So
Yeah.
you might as well, while you're there, ask them, while I'm here, could I get a shot too?
I've been told that might
Yeah.
be an option. If
Yeah.
they have it available,
Yeah.
fine.
If
If
they've
not,
frosted
then for
them,
everyone
They
else.
have to use them anyway.
It
so-
has
Right,
been
yeah.
so far.
So, who knows?
Depends on
Well,
what they
I-
have. I mean,
Right.
they want to vaccinate everybody, but they can only do so much.
Well,
Also-
what I understand is when they're outside, they'll go bad unless
Right.
you use it.
Exactly.
So if that's the case, by all means, yes.
That's why they're
Otherwise, let
doing it,
other
because
people
they
do it.
can't, if people don't show up, they can't keep it for more than 40 hours or something. But also, Sharon was told, because she needs an EpiPen for some of her allergies, that to bring your EpiPen, you have to sit for half an hour after, in case you need the EpiPen, they want you to have it full.
Oh, that's
So
good.
she
to know.
went with 2
Makes sense.
full and she was fine, but They do ask, everybody else sits 15 minutes and they mark your car window so they know when the 15 minutes is up.
Oh,
Then they wash
that's
your window
nice.
off.
Merle,
And
Merle, my son-in-law is an oncologist, and they have shared a sort of schedule for how long you need to wait.
right,
And if you have ever had any anaphylactic response,
right,
regardless of to what, they insist you wait 30 minutes, period.
right.
End of
And
story.
Sharon went with 5 friends with her husband and some other family, and she got hers first and had to wait the half an hour, and then they got theirs in the 15-minute time.
Can I add that I also carry an EpiPen. I've had anaphylaxis 3 times. My allergist said to take an antihistamine an hour before I go for the vaccine. I mean, not that it's going to make it go away, but it might make it less problematic.
Well, that's interesting. That's great to know.
Makes
Thank
sense.
you, Monica. I too am experienced with anaphylactic responses.
Goodness.
Good to know.
I got the flu shot and I was fine, so I figure I'll be fine for this one. This is getting it all set up and doing it.
Yeah.
My arm hurt for a few hours. That was the
Well,
No.
with the flu shot, my arm hurt for 2 days, so I figure I'm gonna get the
Right.
same thing. So I'm gonna be sure this
It did
time to
not
get
hurt
it.
as much as it did not hurt as much as the shingle shot hurt.
I haven't had that one yet, but I figure I'm gonna get it in the arm I don't sleep on this time. I wasn't smart enough to do that last time.
That's the worst, the 2 shingle shots. Those are the most painful.
So I haven't gotten that yet.
Maybe
I
it
thought
has
the other-
something to do with the way, with the person who gives the injection, because
That
I've had
too.
shingles, both shingle shots and no problem, and I
Mm.
got 2 shots. So
Good for
who
you.
knows? Maybe I'm just
That's
lucky.
great.
Maybe I'm lucky, but maybe I was just lucky with the way the person injected it.
I did flu
That
and I did
too.
pneumonia
No.
this year, and I figured 2 was enough. I wasn't gonna do
Yes.
the third one. I figured getting stuck twice was more than enough for me for one. So shingles will wait.
Right.
Yeah, I hit that age where they want you to get everything.
All right. It's 9:44. What do you think? Can we
Go
start?
for
I
it.
think we can
Go
go
for it.
for it.
My
All
computer says
right.
9:45. There we go.
Okay, good. Ding, ding, ding. My kids both have watches. So new, that was like a new gift that they got. And Ezra, every 3 minutes, Ema, guess what time it is? Ema, guess what time it is? I'm like, a minute later than a minute ago. Anyway, nice to see all of you. Let's say a blessing together to study Torah. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam,
asher
asher
kidshanu
kidshanu b'mitzvotov,
v'tzivanu la'asov
la'asov
b'divrei
b'divrei
Torah.
Torah.
So as I understand it, you left it on the minor and easily resolvable question of what is good and what is evil. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that should only take us the whole year.
Yeah, exactly. Slowing our progress through the Torah even more, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. Okay, so Rabbi Koppel told me that you were working on a comment of Friedman's, but I don't know if there was something specific about that comment related to this topic. The only thing I see there is only the tree of good and bad is forbidden. The tree of life is not forbidden. Am I missing something else? If anybody else has Friedman?
We were talking about, have you got a copy of what she gave us at the bottom of page 17? Is that what you were looking at?
You
Mari?
know what? No, what would you read that to me? Do you mind?
Well, it's, okay, so it's the commentary on 2:9, tree of knowledge of good and bad, not good and quote, evil, unquote, as this is usually understood and translated, quote unquote, evil suggests that this is strictly moral knowledge, but the Hebrew word has a much wider range of meaning than that. This may mean knowledge of what is morally good and bad, or it may mean qualities of good and bad in all realms, morality, aesthetics, utility, pleasure and pain, and so on. Do you want me to keep going, Mari?
Yeah, do you mind? And then we'll,
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
It may mean that things are good or bad in themselves, and that when one eats from the tree, one acquires the ability to see these qualities, or it may mean that when one eats from the tree, one acquires the ability to make judgments of good and bad. Perhaps the meaning was clear to the ancient reader who knew the immediate connotations of the words. It is not clear to us in the text of the story as it has survived. The only immediate consequence of eating from the tree that the story names is that before eating from the tree, the humans are not embarrassed over nudity, and after eating from it, they are. This is not sufficient information to tell us what limits of, quote, good and bad, unquote, are meant, nor does it tell us if absolute good and bad are implied, or if it is the more relative concept of making judgments of good and bad. The wording, quote, the eyes of the two of them were opened and they knew that they were naked, unquote, may imply awareness of an absolute value. On the other hand, great numbers of commandments, as articulated in later accounts in Genesis, and especially in the following 4 books of the Bible, suggest that few things are treated as good or bad acts in themselves in these texts. Rather, there is only that which God commands or God prohibits. That's what we were talking
Great,
about.
thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And now I do see this handout here. I think we're working off of a different Friedman, but anyway, that's okay. The point is the same. So first of all, thank you very much, Becca. Any comments on the way he frames that?
We
I
had
would
some
just add
confusion
that
about evil.
Another difference is that before eating from the tree of knowledge, the implication is that Adam and Eve would live forever, but after they would surely die.
Right, and there's a lot of commentary about the fact that they don't die immediately when they eat it, right? So that suggests to us exactly what you said, that it's not that, it's not an immediate consequence. You take a bite and then you die, but they're bringing death into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're no longer immortal.
It also seems to me that what it's saying is that eating from the tree created self-awareness, that they look at themselves and they say, whoa, something is different, and oh, I'm not wearing anything.
Yes.
So that it's the beginning of knowledge of oneself, which has lots of implications.
Yes, lots of implications, and implications about morality and all the other things that we've mentioned. Yes, good. Thank you, David.
I think Owen's comment last week that if they didn't eat of the apple, there was the shortest Torah portion. Yeah, right there.
Yes.
So if that's the case, everything else is a setup. You put the apple and the tree in there just so that they are going to go through all this pain and agony and everything going on. There's no choice there. It's a setup. And everything else that we interpret is just a setup.
Well, I think that is a very, very legitimate read of this Parsha. First of all, God didn't have to put these forbidden things into the garden. God certainly didn't have to point them out. And especially to say, all right, you guys, we're gonna study Torah. It's gonna be really great. We're gonna have a nice time. But whatever you do not think about a white mug. And the worst thing to do would be to wonder what I'm drinking in here. Just let it go. Let it go. Think about anything else. Anything else you see in this room is fine, but do not wonder what is this mysterious liquid. It's really good, but don't wonder about it. Don't wonder. You get my point.
There's Sarah Lee with a white mug.
And hold on. I see a couple hands. I'll call on you in a second. But so David, it is absolutely, I think, a legitimate, like what, was God asleep at the switch? Was God so clueless about human nature that God didn't know where this was going to go? Or is the whole thing a setup to give us free will? And to, for us to understand that we, in the Garden of Eden, everything is beautiful, everything is wonderful, everything is easy, life is provided for us. But there's another way to live, which is what humanity has lived with for these thousands or millennia of years, depending on your perspective, which is we make choices and there are consequences of our choices. And sometimes they're awesome and sometimes they're terrible. And, maybe the point is for us to understand what free will really is about. It's important to us, but there's a dark side of it. And maybe, let me just say one more word about that. When people ask, why did God let the Holocaust happen? Maybe one answer is right here. It's free will. It is as much as we want to make our own independent decisions. That is so desperately important to us. Well, that means other people are also going to make their decisions, and sometimes those decisions are going to have horrific implications. And whether, look, is it good on balance overall? Are we glad that we're in this state? We could argue that, but the reality is we're in it, right? I mean, we can't change it. We can't reverse it. So here we are. And I think the question is, how do we cope with having free will? Merle, then Sarah Lee.
Well, what you just said, the implications, I think what God is telling us throughout the beginning of Genesis is, okay, so for the next however many years, you're going to be going through a lot. This is the consequences of free will in the wrong direction. And I think that's what all the punishments are about, are all the things that happen, that you have to learn your lesson somehow, and this is how I'm going to teach it to you. I gave you the free will, use it the right way.
Yeah, be sure to unmute yourself if you would, Sarah Lee. Go ahead, but you're on mute. Doesn't look like you're on mute, but I can't hear you.
Now she's.
Maybe her audio is on 0. Yeah. She needs to activate her audio.
Do you know how to check your microphone? If you try, there's an arrow next to the mute button. If you point up, and then there's a microphone choice there. And you can also check on audio settings.
Sarah Lee, maybe type what you were going to say. We could see it in the chat.
Sarah Lee, next to the mic, next to the microphone in the lower left, there's a little arrow. They were telling you to do something with that arrow.
Yeah, if you click on audio settings, you can turn your microphone up where it says microphone. The other thing is, or is anybody great in Zoom and willing to give Sarah Lee a call maybe?
Not me.
You just muted yourself again.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. This is heartbreaking. Oops. All right. I know. Why don't you go and take your time and write what you want to say in the chat, and I promise you will read it. Do you know how to open the chat? Put it in the chat?
Would it help for her to end the call and come in again?
Sometimes that helps us to leave the call and come back in. Yeah, sometimes that works. Thank you, Becca. All right, let's keep going. But Sarah Lee, we look forward to hearing from you one way or another. Okay, anything else about free will? Okay, oh, please go ahead, Owen.
It occurs to me that I wonder if God the notion is that God understands that this is a way of teaching humanity about X, Y, Z. But in another way, it kind of got out of hand. Kids are getting murdered in the next few pages, and there's war and there's all this other stuff that in some ways it's kind of playing catch up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think it is definitely reasonable to read the entire book of Genesis as a learning curve on God's part about what humanity can handle and what we can't. I mean, Noah is coming right up. And I think this fits right in. Maybe even if we read it as a total setup, intentional setup, it doesn't come out exactly as God intended.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like.
Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Felix.
Yeah, very much to your point about, don't concern yourself about what's in my white cup. Coming in, from psychoanalysis and Freud said there is no negation in the unconscious. So as soon as something is there, you can't put a no in front of it. So to say, do not eat from the tree of knowledge is, oh, eat from the tree of knowledge.
Right. That's great. Thank you.
So yeah. So Hashem, it seems that Hashem, and this goes to David and Owen, of course, also. Hashem really set it up for us to be tempted and to have us test ourselves out as well as he's testing us, to see what we do. And yeah, life is serious. Life is very serious. It's no joke, even though I like to joke a lot, it's no joke.
Let's take a look at, I want to share, oh, go ahead, Becca.
I was just thinking, we know that we've heard the story that God went and offered Torah, the 10 Commandments to many other peoples who didn't want it for one reason or another. It kind of makes me wonder, did he make this offer and get so far with other people that they went, okay, I won't eat it?
That's great. That's another midrash you should write.
There you go.
Yes, add it to your collection. Okay, I want to take a look at, this is from the women's commentary, and it's just a brief conversation about the actual language. What does it mean? What does good and bad mean? In this case, it's actually a comment on verse 9, which is interesting that when it is first mentioned, so I'm here in verse 9 in the English, then out of the soil, God Adonai grew trees, alluring to the eye and good for fruit. And in the middle of the garden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. It's only later in verse 17 that it's expanded upon to mean the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But on this comment, on this line, we have a comment. The familiar literal translations, knowledge of good and evil, or knowledge of good and bad, preserve, oh wait, you know what? Hold on, am I even right about that? No, I'm sorry. The Hebrew has tov-ra, so forget what I just said. It does say tov-ra.
I can't forget.
Okay. Nice.
It's a white
Good
mug.
one. Good
Nice.
one.
Well done. Well done.
Tovarami.
Good and evil.
Tovara. Yeah.
Tovara, yes.
You did it so fast. It sounded like one word.
Sorry. My mind.
Tovara. Okay.
Okay. Knowledge of good and evil. Preserve an ambiguity that seems intentional. The phrase good and bad could stand for everything. Right? So it's the tree of knowledge of A to Z, right? Good from the good all the way to the bad. But it could also imply intellectual comprehension, everything from A to Z, from good to bad. It could imply moral judgment, or perhaps best, experience, meaning a direct encounter with good and bad. It's the latter that seems to have befallen humankind as a result of eating. Elsewhere, to know refers to intimate, often sexual relations, right? So all of those things are possibilities just on a translation level for what that phrase means. All right. What I'd like to do actually is turn now. I'm in this text. Is anybody using this as sort of your regular or one of your regular? There's one. Great. So this is the women's commentary. There's Marcy's got it. Kat and Michelle have it. I want to turn to an essay in this book, which is not on this line per se, though the next verse, I think we start to get into it in the next verse, which is, just read it briefly. Sorry. Okay.
Rabbi, do you know, is this something that we have on the handouts?
It's not, but I'm going to share
Okay.
it and I can get it to you. Is that okay? Do you mind?
Sure.
Is that okay? Straying a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you
So,
want, I
Tell
can
us what page you're on.
I can scan it and upload it while you're reading it if you'd like.
That is amazing, Marcy. Okay. So let me just read. Let me just read so we just read this, but if the tree of knowledge, a tree of all knowledge, you may not eat, for the moment you eat of it, you shall be doomed to die. That's a nice translation of that. Then verse 18, then God Adonai considered, it is not good that the man be alone. I will make him a helpmate. Ezer kenegdo, right? So it's a very confusing, rich phrase. Ezer means help. My son Ezra is named from the same root. I'm trying to think of where else you would know that root from. Esa enai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Where will my help come from? And negdo means, it comes from neged. You might know that from Talmud Torah Kineged Kulam. this, these are the obligations without measure, honoring one's father and mother, on and on and on. And the study of Torah is equal to them all, right? So kenegdo. So it literally means sort of facing. Sometimes it can mean opposite, facing in an oppositional way, or maybe it's facing in an equal way, or facing in a connective way. So a meeting helper would be the best translation I can think of off the top of my head for that particular phrase. And I want to take a look at an essay that's going to talk a little bit about what that means here and what that might mean about power and how that's interpreted. Go ahead, Merle. But let me just tell. So Marcy, if you want to upload it, that would be great. It is pages 29 through 31. And if you're in the women's commentary, and if you're in the mood to do the poetry also, there's some really beautiful stuff all the way through 34. So if you want to upload 29 through 34, that would be amazing. Go ahead.
Give me a few minutes.
I was just thinking with what you were talking about, where will my help come from? I was thinking that a lot of arks and synagogues and sanctuaries say, "Know before who you stand." And I was just kind of thinking that fits in, though it's not the same language, that it kind of, to me, that's what hit me the most when you said that.
Yeah. It's either maybe an answer to the question or another way of asking the question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm assuming that when people started using that phrase, that it meant that you're standing before God in the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when you go back to self-will, it's kind of all like, where are you standing and what does this all mean?
My colleague, who many of you met, Lori Phillips, wants to put that in the opposite side of the sanctuary, so the people leading the service remember, know before whom you stand. Cool. All of the people. Isn't that nice?
Yes.
That's cool.
That's Lori for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just initial, while we're waiting for Marcy, I'm so grateful for her for doing that. While we're waiting for Marcy, any just initial reactions or anything you have in any of your commentaries? Again, to this line, we're on 18. God considered, it is not good that the man be alone. I will make him a helpmate. Of course, you know that in a text that has commented frequently about what is good, this is the first time we see that something is not good, that anything in the human experience is not good, or pardon me, in the entire creation experience. So there's a lot written about, oh, sorry, Marcy, I am talking about this one. Oh, Steve Haas, that was Steve. I'm talking about this one.
Yes, that's the $99 one on Amazon. I think really? we'll look for the Kindle version.
Goodness, I didn't know. That's funny. Sorry, what was I just saying? Something about
this is the first time. This is the first time we have any mention of negativity.
Yeah, and so the existential loneliness. This seems to be a comment about existential loneliness and being alone in the world. We use it as a lot as a justification for the importance of community, something we take pretty seriously. But it does also seem to be about companionship. Some form of one-on-one companionship. Anybody have a comment on that verse to share?
I do.
Please.
It's almost as if Hashem discovers good and evil for him or herself. That they take a bite of the apple,
that's great.
And God says, "Oh, this is not good."
That's great, Owen. That's great. I love that. This is often one of the first things that I read with somebody when this text in general, when we're studying for conversion or just sort of introducing ourselves to the Jewish tradition. And I often talk about, it's so interesting that God reflects on God's work, right? God created the mountains and the seas and and God stopped and said, this is good. And maybe this is modeling for us, you know, to feel good about our work when we've done good work, and to pause from time to time and to reflect and to check it out. But I've never thought to extend it to this also, which is to say, okay, let me look at my work. Actually, I've got a little more to do here. You know, there's a little something yet that's not quite done, which is often how it is when you've got a project. And I love this idea in conjunction with what we were saying earlier about God being on this learning curve, that God created this human being, and wow, this is amazing. And actually, now that I think about it, he's all alone. It didn't occur to me that was going to be a problem. I think I'm going to make another one.
And extending that. So after the flood, he says, I don't want to do that again. Whoops.
Right.
And there are multiple times where Abraham or Moses talks God out of stuff.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people like Maimonides really love what he called the immovable mover, right? Mm-hmm. God can move us, but God is immovable, right? Solid, static, you know, God is God. For some people, that's a very comforting notion, right? For others, and I tend to be drawn to this idea that God has vulnerabilities and things to learn and maybe even make mistakes along the way, is, for me, that's a very comforting notion. That just feels more something I can dig into a little bit more.
Actually, the only way I can understand all this.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, go ahead, David.
But if you follow Maimonides, the way you're describing God allows for God to be not the complete creator of the universe, because we've got a whole universe, planets, light speed, all this kind of stuff, yet he can't figure out a simple, they're going to make mistakes. And then we talk about, at this point, people have knowledge, yet the Apocryphal throws in Lilith, who was supposedly before Eve, and she had knowledge and said, I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this. So you set God up to be universal, and then you throw him out and say, nope, he's going to destroy everything because he doesn't know what he's doing. So which way do you want to follow the God?
Yes.
David, did you say Lilith was before Eve?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that. Okay.
You know,
But she's not in the Torah. She's external reading, but they threw her in before Eve. And of course she said, I'm out of here. And I think that's why they named the magazine after her.
Mm-hmm. You know, I just want to say one more word about this question of how we want to envision God or how we relate to God. You know, yeah, thank you so much, Marcy. Appreciate it. And thank you, Robin, as well. You know, I often talk about my first weeks as senior rabbi. So that was whatever it was, 12 years ago. And people would come to me with questions that were very serious. Like Felix said, life is very serious, you know, people's employment and money and how we were going to proceed. And the very strong impulse I had was to say, I don't know, let's wait till the grown-ups get back. You know, let's wait till somebody who can answer that question can come back and answer that question. And I think some of our preferences about God might be how we think about the grown-upest grown-up. You know, we need God to be the biggest grown-up there is. And so sometimes whether we want a grown-up who's just going to be so solid and unwavering, you know, maybe it's unsettling to think that, you know, the adults aren't sure of themselves. Or maybe it's very comforting to know that they're questioning themselves too and struggling and growing and those kinds of things. So, you know, okay, let's thank you so much, Marcy and Robin. Let's go to this text. And this is really going to deal with Bereshit kind of as a whole, but I want to take a look at it. So we're starting on, does everybody have access to the text? One way or another? Oh, and heads up, Rachel Adler, who wrote this one, is one of my teachers, and she's a feminist theologian. So we're going in that direction.
I'm so surprised you'd find that in the women's commentary.
Right. Good point.
Revelation.
Right, exactly. Okay, I'll start and then somebody else can read in a little bit. I'm on contemporary reflection, starts on the bottom of page 29. The ancient Babylonian myth or foundational story that strongly resembles Genesis 1 has one great dissimilarity from it. In that myth, creation begins with a murder. The goddess Tiamat, cognate to our word Tehom, watery chaos from Genesis 1-2, is slain. Tiamat is slain by the hero god Marduk, and the universe is carved out of her body. Violence there is inextricable from the process of creation. In Genesis 1, however, creation entails no destruction. Even the primal watery abyss is not completely obliterated, but lingers at the bottom of the sea to reappear in many a psalm or story. The drawing of distinctions and boundaries that marks both accounts in Genesis 1 is peaceful and harmonious. God distinguishes elements of the original watery chaos by drawing boundaries between them and naming them, light and darkness, day and night. Created elements are not simple oppositions. They are both distinct and akin. Juxtaposed verses emphasize the parallels between elements. There are waters above and waters below. Between them stretch a solid expanse of earth and a solid expanse of firmament. The earth brings forth grasses and trees. The sky is strewn with lights. The sea and the air bring forth swarms of living things, schools of fish, flocks of birds, and clouds of insects. The earth births its many creatures, joyously productive, mirroring the water and the air. All right, who would like to pick up with the creation?
I'll pick up. I printed it out. It's easier.
Thank you, Barry.
The creation of humankind continues these dual themes of distinction and similarity. Not one, but two words underline the likeness between Adam, the earthling, and its maker. Humankind bears the Philip and Demut of the divine creator, although in contrast to God's oneness, they are several. They are also distinguished from one another. Zachar, which means male, but is also a word related to remember, the bearer of the male member, and nekavah, which means female, but is also a word related to piercing, the pierced one. In Genesis 3, the two will become a hierarchy, but in Genesis 1, they are presented as equals. Both bear the divine image and semblance. Both are adjured to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and tame it, and hold sway over all the earth.
I'm going to jump in for 1 second just to say I have to go let my family into the building. I'll be right back. Barry, if you don't mind, keep reading. I'll be back in a flash.
I'll keep reading. Adam is the only creature whose sexuality the text notes, that is, describes as male and female. This suggests a sexuality unlike that of the animals. Moreover, in both 127 and in a summary in 5:1-3, the mention of Adam's maleness and femaleness is immediately followed by the proclamation of its divine image, as if our diverse sexualities and our kinship with God were linked. Rather than our sexualities being dissimilar to God or excluded from the divine image, they seem to point toward some element in the divine nature, some divine attribute, creativity or delight, perhaps, or the longing for an other, for which our embodied sexuality is a metaphor. Felix, this is definitely your area. Genesis 2 and 3 tell a darker tale. Here we learn why Adam is called Adam. Multiple puns are evoked by the name, kinship with Adamah, earth or soil, out of which Adam is fashioned. Association with the color red, Adam, like the ruddy sunburned skin of the worker and the red earth he was created to till, and resonance with blood, Dam, the red life fluid. Unlike in Genesis 1, however, in 2:7-3:20, the term Adam refers to the man. The woman is never called Adam, but only Isha, woman, for this one is taken from man. Together they are Adam Vishto, the human, and his woman. For the first man represents both the male particular and the generically human.
All right, let me jump in. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Why don't we go? I was going to break us up a little bit, but at this point, why don't we go and finish the text and then we'll talk about it. So could I get another reader, please?
Here, I'll read.
Thank you.
As the verb built attests, the creation of women differs from other creations. The dual Adam of Genesis 1 is created bara by divine word, and Adam of Genesis 2 is fashioned or molded yatsar by a divine potter. The woman is constructed out of a part of an existing creation, an afterthought created when Adam finds the animals unsatisfactory for mating. She is meant to be the Ezer Kenegdo, literally a helper over against him. That is, opposite him or corresponding to him. The ambiguity in the expression foreshadows an ambivalent relationship. Is she against him or for him? A challenger of an other who mirrors him and merges with him. Awakening, Adam claims her as part of himself, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She does not appear to recognize her otherness, nor does he address her. Her only recorded conversations are first with the serpent and then with God. Finally, at the end of the chapter, Adam names her as he previously named the animals. It does not occur to him to ask her what she calls herself. Genesis 1 is an account of the creation, whereas Genesis 2:3 is the account of the creation of patriarchy, a remarkably truthful account. The world brought about by Genesis 2:3 is one in which desire is no longer joyful but oppressive. Even before the disobedience, relations between man and woman and world are commodified and function-based. Adam is created to till the soil. Woman is created to help Adam. However lush the garden is a workplace, created things are good, not intrinsically as in Genesis 1, but because they are resources. The garden is described as a prime real estate, rich in water and in trees, and adjacent to lands rich in gold and gemstones. Everything is viewed extractively. The forbidden fruit is presented as the epitome of desire in terms not of intrinsic value, but of what is good to eat, alluring to the eyes, desirable for the insight. Woman's desire for man ensures her subjugation and her anguish. Man's desire is not even mentioned. He is exhausted by the effort to pull from the ground what can be consumed before descending into the ground and being consumed by it. Adam and Eve are alienated from each other, from the earth, from their labors, from the rest of creation. The world of patriarchy cries out for mending. A mending world would commit itself to equality and power sharing, to work cooperatively in order to fill needs and solve problems. As one again with the rest of creation, perhaps we could even learn not to resent our mortality so bitterly. Reunited also with the rest of creation, men and women could learn again to be loving friends, as the traditional rabbinic wedding blessings portray them. This is a whole different concept.
This is a whole different concept. This is I think, important and tough critique. To me, I think the last paragraphs are the most really, the most poignant. Genesis 1 is an account of the creation, she says, whereas Genesis 2-3 is an account of the creation of patriarchy, a remarkable, truthful account. But I love this ending here. The world of patriarchy cries out for mending. A mending world would commit itself to equality and power sharing, to working cooperatively in order to fill needs and solve problems. This is the line right here. At one again with the rest of creation, perhaps we would even learn not to resent our mortality so bitterly. So that even if we could come into this existence with fewer power motives and fewer ways to have dominion over one another, maybe we could be in this experience of life differently, and with even less concern about our mortality. It's a bold suggestion, but I think it's interesting and worth considering. What do you think? Too harsh? Fair? Marcy?
I actually have a question. When I heard whoever was reading while I was scanning away here said Isha, isn't that wife?
Well, that's an interesting thing, Marcy. Yes, the word Isha means woman, and it also means wife. In classical Hebrew, the word for husband is Baal. In Hebrew, the word for husband is Baal, which also means master. So one of the things being implied here, that even in the language, there is a problematic patriarchy.
What's the word Ish mean versus Adam?
More or less synonyms. They both mean man. Yeah, Becca.
So I try to, when we read Torah, I try to keep in mind that the words, and I've got multiple Chumashim here, so I'm actually looking at the women's commentary. None of these were written by women. Right. I mean, let's keep in mind who the scribe was. I'm not going to say the author, so I don't want to offend anybody. I'm willing to go with the oral tradition turned into the written. Nonetheless, it was a man holding, the quill. And so I think that has to be considered. What is the phrase? Translation is interpretation. And so, this is absolutely, I think, relevant in this case. The other thing is that we're talking about or at least I'm reading it as a concept that God is above all. And then God created man. And as we continue this hierarchy, then there's woman. And so as God must respond to God, man must respond to God, therefore, ergo, woman must respond, is subservient to and must respond to man. So those are just a few thoughts to throw in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. By the way, when this commentary was produced, there was quite a bit of conversation. It is written as opposed to the other one that Steve was asking about. This one was written with only female authors, and that was subject to quite a bit of criticism. I mean, people said, if you want to write the best commentary, why start just because it's the opposite direction of what's been done for so long, but still, why cut off half the population as possible authors? But I think the idea was, let's be sure we get the female voices have been excluded for so long that we need one volume made up entirely of female voices.
Hence the expression, turnabout is fair play.
Yes, right. Is it? Right.
I think your point is important in all of our readings of most of history, bluntly.
Yeah.
That is who wrote. And each of us comes to the world with our perspectives. So to take something as blanket truth becomes totally questionable.
Yeah, right. I mean, certainly we have learned that about American history in recent years, right? History is written by the victors. And so as we learn, there were other characters who had a different story to tell, that's been important for all of us. Yeah. Do you think that Genesis 2 or Genesis 2:3 is intrinsically patriarchal? Do you think it is suppressing of women? Do you think she's reading something into it here? Do you think that it has to do with how the interpretations have gone? By the way, thank you so much, Isabella. What if God is female or non-binary? How does it affect hierarchy? I think those are critical, important questions. Thank you for bringing in number one, God's genderedness or not, and number two, the non-binary understanding of gender that we are all, I think, in process of developing, and is going to push us to rethink all of this in an even greater and deeper and more important way.
So your question is this the beginning of patriarchy that will carry forward for the rest of our study of text?
Go ahead, Becca.
I mean, I'm trying to understand your question, if that's what you're trying to say.
And I would say, when I was in rabbinical school, Tamara Eskenazi, who is the editor-in-chief of this book, really talked about how most of the chauvinism around Genesis especially is held in later commentary, right? So that it is later interpreters who use the text against women. The example, I'm sure some of you have heard me say this before, but forgive me, I'll say it again. The example is if the woman's punishment is pain in childbirth and the man's punishment is labor of the soil, right? Her classic example is there were times when people said women should not have pain reducing medications, epidurals in childbirth, because look, it says it right here. That's what part of what she's supposed to experience, that, you know, as a punishment. But nobody in the history of anything has ever said, well, men shouldn't have tractors. You know, they're supposed to work the soil with their own labor, right? And the language is exactly parallel enough that if people were really driven by wanting to read the text, that would have been a perfectly logical conclusion. So Tamara's point, I actually have to ask her about this. I wonder if she would still stand by it. I think she wouldn't. I think it's true in many ways that a lot of the using religion to oppress women is not in here. It's in the way people have used what's in here. However, I think there are a few lines that are really tough to get around. That are, you know, I think they come a little later. You'll get to them a little bit later, 3:16 notably. But I wonder if from this very line that we're reading, and Ezer Kenegdo, I mean, does it raise women? If women are on this earth as helpers to men, does that raise our status or lower our status? Right? I mean, you can spin that either way. We're there to serve men, or we're there to help. They need our help, right?
Right.
You know, you could kind of go either way with that.
Right.
If it's really kenegdo, if it's really a meeting of equals, you know, then that tells us something about what the power structure is supposed to be. But you know, I don't think, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we read anywhere that a man is there and as an ezer, as a help to women.
No.
I saw one hand up, Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so reading the Robert Alter,
Yeah.
text, you know, he talks about Ezer, you know, help, he says help is too weak because it suggests merely an auxiliary function, whereas Ezer elsewhere connotes active intervention on behalf of someone, especially in a military context, as often seen in the Psalms.
Mm.
I think that's interesting, a military context, because we never think about that here in Genesis.
Call for backup.
Call for backup.
I need reinforcements, right?
Yeah.
But what if it's translated as partner?
Yeah.
What if the word was partner instead of helper?
Yeah.
Well, that helps a lot for me.
That would be much better.
How about the fact that we're not mentioning that Eve is essential? Unless Adam really wants to do this for the rest of eternity by himself, can I point out, you really need Eve. She's going to be pretty important. So she's more
Mother
than a
of all
helper.
life. And also
Right.
back to David's point, without her, the book ends pretty quickly, right?
Right. And so helper seems like a weak term because she is, maybe partner is more accurate because she's absolutely essential. I mean, he can be a yin for as long as he wants, but without his yang, he ain't going anywhere.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is the word partner even really much in the Torah? I mean, maybe it's just a matter of these are the words that they use then in regular conversation. I mean, I'm thinking of, you know, when you're walking, you have two legs. One leg has to go forward first. I mean, you can't, otherwise you get nowhere. So you have to start somewhere. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best leg in the world, but, you know, I mean, you got to start somewhere.
No, that's great. So there, I don't know. So the word in Hebrew for partner is shutaf, And I don't know if it occurs in the Bible at all. I can look it up. But I think you're right, Robin, that I think that that's exactly what's being suggested, is that maybe that's what this means. And the other thing I'll say is that Rachel Adler, who wrote a new wedding ceremony called a Brit Ahuvim, which means a covenant of beloveds, looked at models of partnership agreements. So what she calls it actually a Brit Shutafut, a covenant of partnership. And she wrote a beautiful ceremony. It's in her book, Engendering Judaism. It's the 5th chapter. And it is, she's also got a stunning ketubah. She's got a really beautiful, or a Brit Ahuvim text, a really, really beautiful ketubah text that she uses. And it is very easily applicable to whoever the gender is of the people getting married and however they define themselves and so on. So it's really an important document, but she looked to exactly what you're suggesting, which is partnership, to try to imagine what a more modern and egalitarian wedding might look like.
So you asked us if this is the beginning of chauvinism. Is there any element of your question where you're suggesting that this was actually thought out, planned, that, you know, the people of that era could look ahead and say, it's going to be important to us to keep those women down. You got to keep them pregnant and on the farm, you know? Was it intentional?
So let me say something and then I'll let these guys talk too. I believe that for much of human history in much of the world, okay, so not always and not everywhere, but in much of human history in much of the world, there has been a power imbalance, generally speaking, between men and women, and it was so ingrained, it was so much baked in, that I don't believe this was intentionally written as a power document, but I believe that it might not have occurred to some of the biblical scribes to buck that system. I mean, I think that was, I mean, you could say that about somebody who was writing a document in the 1950s, right? You know, so I don't believe that it is a cruel or, you know, intentionally oppressive document, but I do believe that somebody like Rachel Adler is helping us liberate the text a little bit. You know, she's saying, let's see what's in here and let's call it out, and that can help us understand and continue to love this text. I want to let Barry and David talk, and then we'll come back around. Go ahead, Barry.
The concept that was spoken to just earlier about partners and partnerships. A partnership is not necessarily all co-equal. I'd like to refer to, I think it's the British government, they refer to the Prime Minister as first among equals. There is even among partners, there is a controlling partner who really has absolute authority over many decisions. So I think whether you use the word helper or partner, I think you still may end up with a patriarchy anyway.
So, but let me ask you this, Barry, do you think that every agreement / relationship / cooperative endeavor needs to have a singularly more powerful person, entity?
Well, there's some decisions that have to be made quickly, that have to be made and unilaterally. Yeah, I do.
Or you use the word agreement. I think that's an important word. They may not be equal, but do they agree to not be equal?
Well, any agreement, every agreement relating, any partnership type agreement, and bylaws of a synagogue, there are certain decisions are taken away from the community and are left to the board, and some are taken away from the board and left to the executive committee and further up to the president or chairman. It's just the nature of hierarchy. When you're dealing with multiple peoples, there's automatically hierarchy. I'm not arguing it's good or bad. I'm just saying it is, and it's a reality.
I want to let David talk. Yep. Go ahead.
Great. Well, I think it's hard to say this without getting in trouble, so I might as well blunder through it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Freedom of speech.
Rachel Adler, Becca, my wife, the ladies of this group are all here because we have a surplus economy. If it was back at the time of Adam and Eve, there's no surplus for anybody to go except one to do some work and some to take care of the family. There is limited resources for outside exploration of our intellects. It's not until much later that we start having surplus that men can take jobs away from working to start learning scribing. And then, but you say, well, that makes them more equal than women. Yet you find women like Donna, I forget her name again. Sephardic woman, husband dies, she takes over the.
Donna Garcia.
There are episodes and papers throughout history showing that when the men are away at war, who ran it? It wasn't some other guy. The wives ran it. They ran the castle, the castelline. They took the money in, they raised it. So maybe they didn't have, quote, the publicity, but women had in many respects, not always, I will grant you, an equal ability to help run the house or the households, or it's hard, I'm not quite sure what's the best words of phrase, but there is some equality always there because, as somebody once said, if he's just doing the digging, there ain't no yang to clean up the house and grow the, to prepare the food. So there is, I know somebody's going to get mad at this. So there is a bit of equality there, whether we want to admit it or not. It's just how we apportion the word equality. And I'm getting, who wants to start digging my grave?
Yeah, you're on thin ice there, I think.
I know.
Yeah.
But now that we're into a modern society where we have plenty of food available, people don't have to work quite like this and can take time to study, to read, to raise children, but not as their primary. They can start having equality in what they want to do with the men. But sometimes I think we don't recognize some of that equality may have been there before.
Best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Now, okay, Sandy, where's the shovel? I'm going to dig my grave.
Yeah, right.
Just needs a knife.
I think you would find some critique of your positions there, and I won't go into it right now. But I just think that historically, what you're talking about may have been the way it's been, but I think that people like Rachel Adler are saying that it doesn't have to be the way it has to be, and that all individuals, both women and men and non-binary folks, have a great deal to contribute to society that don't have to be necessarily defined by societal roles, and that, you know, and that in particular, you know, that women have been, have been confined maybe in a different way than men have over the course of history, and that maybe we can imagine the whole thing really, really differently. But we'll leave it there for now. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm going to move in the opposite direction for a variety of reasons as I'm counting the females in the group. I think we almost have to say the reality is how it was portrayed. However, if we just admit that those times and that patriarchal reading or interpretation or writing was really not appropriate for thinking, contributing women throughout history. In our Musar study, we've studied the classics, Luzzatto and all the ones of many years after Genesis, but they were written by men. We had a text written by a female. But I think the point, and Alan Morenas said when we started studying all this, you have to consider the historical context and move beyond it to what principles, what you can really get out of it from a moral, from an ethical viewpoint. Recognize, as he said, that women were not writing those texts. But if you simply substitute out and say people, instead of focusing on the word man, you get a lot of important things. And I think you have that even in Genesis. You know, there's humankind here that we're dealing with, how they respond to these issues, to being given free will, to being told what to do and not to do, and how they responded. Rabbi Bonnie said something really incredible last week or the week before, whenever it was, where she said, why are we punishing women? They weren't even, a woman wasn't even created when God gave that first commandment, don't eat of that tree. And I thought that was a fascinating piece of information. But we can focus our attention on how women got the short end of the stick here, but it was, I don't think most of us believe that today. I would like to say any of us believe that today that are studying this. I would just hope we can go beyond that recognition that it was incorrect by today's standards, and history has changed.
So thank you, Steve. Let me say this maybe by way of beginning to wrap up for today. What you're getting to here, I think, is critically important for us, especially as liberal Jews. And that is, how do we approach a text that doesn't sit with our modern sensibilities, doesn't sit quite right with our modern sensibilities? And I think there are a number of approaches, and they're all important in different ways in different times. So one is, and thank you, Lisa, is pointing out that, you know, though we live in what I believe is a mostly liberated world, there are many people around the world who do not. Important to acknowledge that. Okay, so one thing we can do is lovingly take apart the text. And I hope that you know me well enough to know that even when I'm coming on pretty harsh on what's written in here, it is comes from a place of love of the Torah and wanting to wrestle and come to a good place with it. But I do think it's important sometimes to just simply say, this is not okay with us. Right. And I think we can all think of particular lines that in our modern sensibilities, they're not okay. And we just have to say that out loud. That's part of liberating it, I think, by the way. That's one. Number two is understanding the historical context. So I love, Becca, your comment. Let's refer to it as scribes, not authors, but somewhere, somehow, some human being had something to do with this getting to us. Doesn't mean it's not sacred, doesn't mean God has nothing to do with it, but there are human beings with human minds who were part of getting this into our hands, and they were influenced by their own cultural context and their own lives and their own stories and so on and so forth. So to understand that that it's a historical, among other things, it's a historical document with a history. The third thing is that is to then give it the best read possible, or find a way that we can still love this text, right? So I think what you're talking about from the Musar Institute probably falls under give it the best read possible, right? A lot of times when I find pietistic language that says, and it's all over our tradition, that says you have to follow the laws, and here's the reasons here are the reasons you have to follow the laws, and there's a fear factor and there's a controlling factor. I want to react against that. I don't like that approach to, supporting our religious practice. However, I can also then argue, what if instead of particular practice, what if this were arguing for what you and I would call everything that's good, good values and treating, what if we substitute particular practice with treating every human being as an image of God? right? And the way they use, their power structures to try to get people to, keep kosher or whatever it is. What if we had that same fervor about getting people to treat each other in the image of God, right? Like what if we elevated that? Can I find some good in the way they're doing it? Maybe I can. And Steve, you're saying, okay, so when it's talking about man, maybe it doesn't mean man, maybe it means all of humanity, and maybe we can extend it out. That's one way to maintain a relationship with the text. Read it with the best possible spin that you possibly can. But there are also other ways to say, look, this is problematic to me, but there's still something in it that is sacred and important and beautiful. And you're all here for Torah study, so I know that's the general approach you all have. And so I see that we're coming on. Oh, we're actually a little bit late. Does anybody have any comment that we cannot close today without hearing? Sherry, bring it on.
I'm sorry, but I have to say this. This is exactly the argument that we are having in terms of the Constitution and strict constructionalism.
That's right. Yes.
This is it. So it extends beyond just our text.
Yes, it does. Thank you, my friends. Thanks for letting me stir things up. You know how I like to do that. A pleasure studying with you, and I hope to see you soon, here virtually or
otherwise.
All right. Thanks.
Have a great week.
Bye.
You too. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.